We're back with another edition of the Federalist Radio Hour. I'm Emily Jashinsky, culture editor here at The Federalist. As always, you can email the show at radio@thefederalist.com. Follow us on Twitter at FDRLST. Make sure to subscribe wherever you download your podcasts as well. Today, I'm joined by my colleagues, Kylee Zempel, assistant editor at The Federalist, and Christopher Bedford, senior editor at The Federalist. Welcome to you both.
Thanks, Emily.
Thanks for having me.
Now, what we want to talk about today is breaking down the joint address to Congress last night that President Biden delivered.
Was that like a joint address? There's like 15 of them there.
It was an address about his joints. Like.
An update?
Yeah, it was an update on his joints.
I've been using my Seb Gorka joint cream.
Well, okay, so let's first get one thing out of the way. It doesn't matter. Like as long as you clear the bar of going out there and putting the words together as they are shown to you on the teleprompter and you don't say anything crazy and nobody screams you lie, this doesn't matter. It doesn't really, the base.
Every day he's alive, he exceeds expectations. Forget about a public appearance.
So it exceeds expectation. But I mean, really, for any president, I mean, even if you give a really eloquent, beautifully written speech, they don't resonate in our sort of like historical memories or imaginations, right? Like we don't have a lot of iconic presidential quotes or phrases or moments drawn from joint addresses in the form of State of the Union speeches.
But in the 50 years or so that Chris Wallace has been covering the State of the Union, or the inauguration, Joe Biden was the best. It was the best he'd ever seen.
That's what I heard, yeah. But so this is the thing, like it doesn't, okay, the sort of chattering class can talk about it and analyze it, and it does produce endless fodder. I mean, the chattering class could record 20 podcasts on every segment of a State of the Union or a joint address that's sort of taking the place of a State of the Union as it did this year. You could you could talk about what he said on China and you could analyze every word of it. You could do the same thing with how he discussed his jobs plan, what he did and did not say about the border and about immigration. You could go on and on. The chattering class now has thousands of words. And they even have this dumb aisle fist bumps to analyze. And this is not new. It happens every single year. So let's get this basic stuff out of the way before we dive into what we can sort of draw from the speech and say, this is what you can expect going forward, as opposed to, this participating in this strange delusion that the country was enraptured by Joe Biden last night. What did you guys both think of the speech? Chris, did you even watch it?
I did watch it.
Oh, okay.
I was a little late to watching it.
I watched it after on 1.5 speed because that's the only way to listen to Joe Biden. Yeah, it's the only way. And the speech itself, it sounded like Sleepy Joe meets room full of kind of drunk people talking about their really great ideas. Like, we could do this. That sounds good. Oh, yeah, let's do that. Bring it to my desk and I'll sign it. Yeah. And that's it was that plus the sleepy energy all wrapped into one.
At first, I was amazed at his energy. At first, I thought, this sounds like you're 10 years younger, when he came out and he was yelling and giving like kind of a normal political State of the Union address that he was excited about. I was listening to it on my phone at first, and I took it away to look at it, and I was like, okay, that's him. He looks okay. And then I heard him stutter and falter about 7 or 8 minutes in, which is not that difficult to do. You're trying to keep track of everything on the screens. And he never recovered. And his energy level went down and down. It's like, oh, did the adrenaline shot wear off? Did he need another bump, Joe? I mean, he just started to lose energy. And within 5 minutes of that, he had the exact same tone that parents have when they're reading to their children after they've fallen asleep, and they're just like slowly backing out of the room, like, and then the fox said, and shut that door. Like,
did you see the shot of Ted Cruz apparently actually sleeping? Like his eyes were, so someone else said this, but it's really hilarious. There's this picture of Ted Cruz with his eyelids sort of 3/4 of the way shut, and the camera caught it, obviously, and it was at some point during the speech.
They couldn't wait to catch it.
Yeah, well, of course. And it sort of looked like when your parent comes back in to check on you to make sure that you're asleep and you're pretending to be asleep. Your mom walks in and is like, "Are you asleep?" And you're like, "Yes."
And he was one of the youngest people there.
You're responding to me.
Why did he go?
Ted Cruz?
Yeah.
Why did he get invited?
Well,
I don't know why anybody got invited.
Because no one else wanted to go. No, I mean, I think that was a nice move by McConnell to pick him. But how many, like, if you had an opportunity as a senator who's seen one of these before to say, you know what, I want to let someone else go in my stead. I'm not going to get attacked by the New York Times or Washington Post or called you're boycotting Kamala Harris, you Klansman. You can sit out this incredibly BS political theater and just go home and be with your kids, or with what they probably did with your donors. That sounds like a better night.
I'm sorry, I can't say. Or with your cats, I said.
With the cats?
Yeah.
More than one cat is a sin.
You just have Buster?
Yeah, just one.
He's a good cat.
He's very lonely.
Well, all right. So any other thoughts on just sort of how the speech might have hit the audience? We saw we've seen a lot of those sort of instant reaction polls. We do know the people who are watching were much more Democratic, tended to be Democratic voters or self-identified Democrats, which is common, not unusual at all. And we know that they had high remarks, that they liked it from those instant reaction polls to the extent that you can believe them. But that sort of gets to the larger...
It was lower than Trump's was, and it was lower than Bush's was in 2000, their first.
Yeah, but the point is people who like them just fine. It's not controversial.
It's like 51% approval versus I think it's the lowest since they started doing that in CNN.
Do we know how many
still
people
over 50.
watched it? Were people tuning into it? Yeah. Okay.
So this is getting increasingly, this is kind of an interesting sort of tangent to go down, but it's actually getting increasingly difficult for us to track how many people are watching public events like this. So back in the day, when there were 4 channels that broadcasted this, even before cable news, we knew exactly how much of the country tuned in to watch Ronald Reagan speak. Or we knew exactly, we had a much better idea of how many people tuned in to watch a presidential speech in 2002 because the options were pretty much cable and the networks. But now so many people are watching on YouTube, on the White House website.
I watched on YouTube.
Yeah,
Same.
right, yep. Right. And it comes in over the course of days and days, and people see recap videos on Twitter and on Facebook. Some people watch it on Facebook Live. It's almost impossible to quantify these things anymore. That's something I write about more when it comes to entertainment kind of often, but it is sort of interesting to think about it in the political realm. We're losing touch with how many people are paying attention to what. Isn't that kind of interesting? Or am I just being crazy? I'm being okay. Chris is giving me a look.
I love it. No, I agree with you, and I love that they're doing that because that means these idiot charlatans who sell all these ads and do all this polling for campaigns and are consistently wrong. It's my hope that eventually this will drive them out of business. It hasn't happened yet.
Nothing can drive these people out of business. Are
you
kidding me?
Forever. They live forever. My favorite part about the beginning of the speech was probably Liz Cheney
rushing to.
If it only would have made it better if she had gone over the back of a seat in order to shake Joe Biden's hand.
She's at a Justin Bieber concert and waiting by the bus.
She's in the mosh pit.
Yeah.
Is she angling for a job at CNN when she loses hers? What is she thinking?
She probably has a contract in her inbox.
Right? She's got a contract. Bill Kristol's little pat and the other guys turned out we're buddies with a pederast. So we need a new Republican hating Republican. Awesome.
One part that I actually did, this is going to sound sappy, really and I found it very interesting that in the course of a year, when there has been so much pessimism about this country coming from the left, you hear some of it from the right when, people take a glance back at this whirlwind of a year, let alone a decade, and the world has changed so much so quickly, and it's seemingly not for the better in so many different ways. But when Joe Biden said there's no reason that what he was talking about, blades for wind turbines can't be made in Pittsburgh instead of Beijing. And Democrats got on their feet and cheered enthusiastically, as did Republicans. And I'm not saying that Democrats are going to do anything to live up to that ideal, but I am saying something small to cling to is just at least the notion that we can all say there's something nice about the idea of buying American. It's a fundamentally patriotic idea that you would have no reason to clap for because it's more expensive unless you had this real connection to and appreciation for American workers. Again, I'm not saying Democrats are going to show that on the policy level. I'm not saying they're going to do that, but I thought it was actually kind of nice.
But if Donald Trump had said the same thing in his State of the Union, which he did,
but
it would be anti-Asian racism.
It was dark.
Yes, but this is a thing that I noticed myself getting caught up in sometimes, is because media is so corrupt that sometimes it's difficult to disentangle the media reaction or like criticism of the media reaction from the substance itself. And like, yes, 100% the media, but at the same time, even like with the speech, the most notable stuff about the speech, in my opinion, was how idiotic the media reacted to it. I mean, it was just Nicole Wallace talking about how Operation Warp Speed had nothing to do with Trump.
Right.
Did you see that? I mean, it's like...
I saw clips, yeah.
To me, that's a bigger story even than anything that Joe Biden said, because we knew what he was going to say. We know what his priorities are. He's already introduced all of the legislation he talked about, and he's done it in the same terms. So when the media comes in and acts like, as you say, like if Donald Trump had said the exact same thing, that's really interesting. I think it actually would have said it was racism.
Yes, well, but even outside the media, which I completely agree with everything you just said about the media, but even outside the media, I mean, you watched during Trump's State of the Unions when they would pan Congress, and they're all sitting there with their arms crossed. Like, it's not as if this has always been some bipartisan consensus.
Dressed in white.
They're all dressed in white.
But like some bipartisan consensus that we should, yes to America, no to China.
No, that's true.
That's brand new.
Absolutely true. Yeah.
Are you getting married today? I couldn't believe that outfit. I'm still talking about it. And even if you are, should you honestly be wearing white? Ooh, okay, let's go on. I couldn't believe the amount of gaslighting that Joe Biden was. Actually, I totally could believe the amount of gaslighting that Joe Biden was doing.
I mean, that was the whole
wonder
speech.
How many people out there who are watching who've been living in the real economy, not the DC economy, and have lost their jobs and are maybe getting it back, or maybe getting something like it, or have lost the coal job, or have lost the pipeline job. And he says, we've created new jobs. And it's like, new jobs? Or you helped get the economy back going again, with just like Donald Trump was doing. What do you mean these new jobs? And then what really struck me, because she's basically the most unpopular figure in America, is when he said, under the bold leadership of Speaker Nancy Pelosi, America's healing. And it's like something like that. I thought, I know that she's like right behind you, but she doesn't play well. You shouldn't. No one, and by the way, no one freaking believes that. I don't think there's a single person in America who's like, you know what? Nancy Pelosi's bold leadership saved my life. Maybe there is, and I just graciously have not met them. But
that comment is the equivalent of the nature is healing meme. Like it's clearly a joke. It's not true. Like her bold leadership is healing. No, it's not.
I feel healed. Gotta love Crazy Nancy.
Okay.
Crazy Nance.
Well, so the one thing that Joe Biden did not really address, I think, sufficiently, and that's, I don't know how you could really dispute that, is the border crisis, which we are told is not a crisis, and then we're told in a slip-up it is a crisis, but it's all just a stupid game of semantics, because we know, to Kylie's point, that the disturbing images from a humanitarian perspective that have emerged from the border, be they under Donald Trump or Joe Biden, or even Barack Obama when the left chose to ignore them in a similar way that they are doing right now, that is a matter. This is kind of a creepy thing that it's hard to, this issue brings it into focus more than any else, is that how the media can pick up on a narrative and make something a crisis or not a crisis, depending on when they want to. And they do that all the time, of course. I mean, it's something that we see happening with police shootings right now as well. Something is suddenly an epidemic because a couple of things
Black men can't go outside without being shot by police.
That's your white privilege speaking.
That's a reality. I heard that from Vox.
You heard that from Vox? Okay.
Right now. Thousands are dying every day.
But anyway, moving right along. But anyway, so this is an interesting thing, right? Where the media has decided that there is no crisis at the border, that, there's an immigration situation. But under Trump, it was endless coverage. And then we see that sort of, I think, reflected in Joe Biden's lack of interest in really addressing this substantively.
It's been like 30 seconds on the border.
Well, The beautiful thing about the State of the Union, or whatever the joint session was, is that nobody gets to ask questions. So if you don't bring it up, it doesn't get talked about. And, Joe Biden can count on the media generally not making a big fuss about him not talking about the border because they don't care. And if he does bring it up, there is no positive way to spin it because it is a crisis. So he gets to say whatever he wants, generally pretty scot-free, because what? Who's gonna make a fuss about it? Glenn Kessler? Like what?
No, definitely not.
No one. So, nobody asks questions. Nobody's going to raise that. He can say whatever he wants or not say whatever he wants.
And he did exactly. And they're just going, I mean, remember when Joe Biden was too old, sick, and frail to run for president? The media just ran a campaign for him anyways, and it was fine. And
except they did ask those questions when it was a primary, and they wanted somebody other than Joe Biden.
Well, Joe Biden was a racist back then.
He was a racist, absolutely. He was an old,
vice president,
senile racist.
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, which is all kind of true, but he's like he's like one of like those uncles who says things that are really inappropriate.
He's a boomer.
Racist. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's just.
No, we shouldn't smear all the boomers with Joe Biden.
No, not ever. True. Not remotely. He spent almost no time on the border. He gaslighted us. And the question is, I guess, it's going to come down to, do you believe that everything in America was terrible and then Joe Biden fixed it with Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi? And I think in order to believe that, you have to already be a pro-decline person. But my favorite part, basically of the speech last night was Ben Dominich's analysis on Fox.
Okay, you are sucking up to your boss on a podcast right now.
I almost never do that. In fact, we're doing this without him right now because someone's running late and other people showed up at work. I'm the guy who does his job. You must be the other guy.
I like how Chris just was like, hey, no. I'm tough.
I'm tough.
I'm not
tough.
a sucker.
Can you cut this part?
Oh, absolutely not. That's the last thing I would do.
But he called it he said, this is complete theater. Like, it's just all theater. All of these people are vaccinated or have had COVID. The room is empty. They're all wearing masks. They're distancing. He said, this is fundamentally unserious. And I thought that was completely correct. That everything last night was BS.
I thought the masks were extremely stupid, and the lack of space, the insane surplus of space was ridiculous. The distancing.
There was no reason for that. Since we're talking about COVID, Biden's speech was interesting on that point because I really get frustrated with the amount of time that he spends talking about all of the things that the pandemic has done to us without acknowledging the role that his bureaucracy has played in that. And that was such a gaslighty part of his speech that took up quite a disproportionate amount of it when he's talking about jobs and he's talking about education and he's talking about unrest. He's talking about all of these things. And then he's talking about, America bouncing back from the pandemic. And it's like, America largely doesn't have to bounce back from the pandemic. We have to bounce back from your CDC.
That was another thing.
Yeah. So that took up so much of his speech and it really touched like all of the other main topics and it was so gaslighty.
I think there actually is a huge segment of the country, and I noticed this doing reporting going around doing COVID reporting at the beginning of the pandemic and halfway through and even months into it, who really think like there's been no anger at politicians. The anger at politicians is not what it should be considering what they've done to us. How many people's businesses they destroyed? How many lives have been destroyed? How many people have not been able to see your dying parents? How many parents were killed? And most people haven't been angry at politicians because they're like, oh, the COVID did this. The COVID did this. Like,
right.
No, it didn't.
Right.
The COVID didn't shut down your child's little league. Loser bureaucrats did. So I was wondering, watching this, if they're going to buy that. When he said this is one of the worst pandemics in history, that's bullshit. Like that's like remotely true. Like not remotely true. And in fact, it's a total sissy pandemic. Real people have actually died from it. But like, if the end result for the ruling class of a country in the middle of a pandemic is to like wear sweatpants every day and Zoom with your friends and eat delivered groceries, it's probably not that serious of a pandemic compared to the Spanish flu or what we thought was coming, like a bubonic plague when we had videos of young men dropping dead in the street in China. We had garbage trucks filled with bodies going through Wuhan. We're like, this looks really bad.
Yeah.
Turned out it was just the Chinese were killing everyone.
Yeah, as they do.
Yeah.
As they do.
They found a cure. Cure this whole village.
It's horrible. So, like, here's a quote from Biden's speech. In America, we never, ever, ever stay down. Americans always get up. Today, that's what we're doing. America is rising anew, choosing hope over fear, truth over lies, and light over darkness. America is ready for takeoff, in my view. It's like you're sitting with 15 people sitting a mile apart, all wearing a mask, fully vaccinated. Like, what part of that is truth over lies and hope over fear? Like, shut up, Joe.
I just, as you said that, I started to giggle because I imagined, like, this is the storybook that Jill Biden reads to him to wake him up every morning. Come on, Joe, we're gonna get up. America doesn't stay down. America gets up. Not today. It's like, yes, like a rocket ship. Okay,
like a rocket ship. Oh no. Okay. Well, the other thing that was, I can't believe we actually haven't talked about this yet, but maybe we haven't talked about this because we wanted big government all along. No, I'm kidding. That's just Chris. But the point that I was going to make is it's sort of
good government.
Yeah. Okay. Good luck. This sort of brought into focus the fact that Biden is proposing $6 trillion worth of programs, and they include things like childcare. They include things like 2 years of free community college, but they also include a lot of different just benefits. Obviously, he's trying to offset them by closing certain loopholes and raising taxes on wealthy people. First of all, he can talk a good game about doing that, carried interest, whatever. It's not actually going to happen as he describes it because he's already has Jamie Dimon hanging out with him at the White House, and he's a longtime senator from Delaware. It's not going to happen how he wants it to happen. Also, Democrats now have all of these suburban voters in their coalition. So it's not, they're going to talk a big game about income inequality. They're not going to get to offset all of these things with deep slashes, or they're not going to hit the rich as hard as they say they're going to hit the rich in terms of tax codes. But none of this really is coupled with meaningful reform. And to me, if anything has been clear, I think to people on the left and the right over the past year, it's that our federal government is a lumbering, like, it's so incompetent across so many different layers of the bureaucracy, so incapable of performing basic things that it needs to perform, so mired in identity politics, so just gummed up in all of this bureaucratic nonsense that it cannot perform basic duties. And Joe Biden now wants to take $6 trillion, spend it quickly, and doesn't want to meaningfully reform places like the IRS. Just give the IRS more money and that will solve the problem. It seems insane.
Well, and like on these sprawling and amorphous word salads of plans, like they're so ill-defined. It's like throw money at this, throw money at that, but it's like we have like the American Rescue Plan and the it's like the Friends and Family Discount Plan. Like it's all just these things that mean nothing. It's just like words on a page.
Friends and Family Discount is for friends and family.
That might be kind of nice.
That's nice. Yeah, I like it.
But even that is so gaslighty. Like the education point, it's like, let's talk about how far behind we are in education and talk about how valuable it would be to have kids go to college for free, and completely ignore the fact that we've kept our children home from school for a year. Like, as if that's not relevant to this discussion. No, it's because they're underfunded. Okay.
I love the some of the messages going out. Somebody was on Twitter the other day. I don't know why I was there. He must have sent it to me. But he said every Democrat who sends their kids to private school and has been giving money to teachers unions, or taking money from teachers unions, excuse me, is going to be like an opposition research dream because of this double standard. And that is one place I think where people have made the connection that someone's doing this to me, is the not being able to send their children to school is turning a lot of apolitical people fairly radical, which is a good thing, and getting people involved. And it actually might make conservatives the first time interested in all levels of politics. Like, you're not going to get the average conservative, no matter how much they love their town, to join this board and that board and this board and like oversee until they're older. And the left is just doing it. Or at least the more liberals like it. The leftist does it all the time because to them everything is politics. And I think this is going to have to start waking some people up. And to your green energy thing, I almost laughed out loud listening to him earlier when he said, when I hear green energy, I think jobs. Or global warming, I think jobs.
No, he said jobs.
Really? You do? Because that's not what happens. Losing jobs? Yes. Yeah. Losing jobs. we're going to lift children out of poverty. It's like, could you put them there? Do you think it's healthy for that child in West Virginia or in Kentucky or in New Mexico on an Indian reservation to not have a dad and work anymore? Do you think that's healthy? Probably not.
I think that argument is getting increasingly difficult for conservatives to make, because I think even conservatives are, I shouldn't say conservative broadly, but I mean, here in DC, at least it's clear that I don't think there are a lot of conservatives who are persuaded by that. And you would maybe have a better understanding of that, Chris.
Persuaded by which?
Persuaded by the idea that throwing money at problems, and I mean, like literally just throwing money at problems, can be an effective or reasonable way to solve them.
Yeah, I don't think anybody really thinks that.
Because conservatives, by the way, under Trump, just spent.
You just have to get enough people to care. And right now, the Republicans are actively helping to bring back pork and earmarks that will allow them. It's the currency of corruption. It's the kind of thing. It's the kind of power. They're handed it over to Democrats, which is what they need. Because right now, they basically don't have 50 on anyone. They don't have like the 50 votes. They don't need Kamala Harris down there. One Democratic senator is pulling off from almost all of their initiatives. They start bringing the earmarks to actually get Republican support for this. And there's like, I think there's two types. There's fiscal hawks in the conservative right, but they're outnumbered pretty dramatically.
And they've lost credibility.
Yeah.
I mean, completely
Money's not real. Money's not real. I mean, I don't know. I even struggle to give a damn about it. I remember talking to people like, do you know how much it costs to have the National Guard in Washington, D.C.? I'm like, I don't know. The effing Capitol is occupied.
Yeah.
Like, how about that? And it's like, well, I think debt's bad. I'm like, I think we're chemically castrating children. Do we deserve to stay as a country? I mean, come on. Like, we're such fundamental issues that it's hard to keep track of the grocery lists of debt that they're piling up.
But this is kind of what I mean, is that though, like, none of this is targeted. We're just wasting money when we're pouring it into, increasing the budgetary expenditure to the IRS, supporting it with more and more money, and it's failing us worse and worse. You know what I mean? Like it seems like at the very least, we should be coupling massive spending increases with basic reforms. So if you tell me that you want to spend more money on this, you need to show me how the education department is going to be able to implement that effectively. And if anything, I see the education department, like let's say that the education department has some role in overseeing a universal pre-K program. All I see an education department doing is injecting its ideology in mandatory ways, punishing people who don't go along with it, and screwing up, making it very difficult for people to access what they are now paying for with their tax dollars.
Right. I think people, their biggest concern is just how much of their paycheck is being taken out. Like, I think it's clear that they don't see the kickbacks that they're promised. So like it has less to do with the deficit or the national debt or even like which programs money is going toward. It's just like, this is how much less I'm making on my paycheck. Like a lot of Americans are just struggling in that regard. I don't think they're worried necessarily about what specific programs Joe Biden thinks he's going to throw money at. I think, they hear the plan is this many $1 trillion. It's like, okay, so what is my new salary then? I think that's the concern for a lot of Americans who don't live around here and aren't wonky. And, those numbers mean nothing to a lot of people unless
they're too big.
Right. Unless
it's hard to understand them
until it comes out of their check, which is legitimate.
Oh, that's an actual psychological phenomenon. It's like numbers after a certain point.
Right.
Our brains comprehend them.
I have no idea. how much that is. I know.
You can barely count.
That's true. I can't spell. I don't know why you guys have me.
Well, I don't know why we have you copy editing.
I never edit. This year the past year has really deadened even those people who care about these dollar signs to it, because it's just so much money. I mean, it's just so much. You're so used to it. You start to get normal. It's like you can deal with smells and sights and realities that you would right now, if you were to see it, be like, oh my gosh, that's horrible. But if it's around you every day, you just become deadened to it.
Well, I mean, the other thing is we've seen we are called the Federalist, and I think over the course of last year we've seen the success of our Federalist system in that when states like South Dakota or Florida needed to deal with, I mean, it's just the case study in why we have the system in place, because different states have wildly, dramatically different populations and geographies, and they have to deal with things differently. And when governors took the reins and did that in a precise and targeted way, unlike Gavin Newsom, who just implemented these blankets and then made carve-outs for himself and for Hollywood, and I'm sure there were others, but when you had governors who resisted the urge to, pull the trigger on blanket lockdowns, et cetera, and took a different approach, it worked.
Right.
I mean, it worked.
And like Biden's speech in its entirety was basically a rebuke of the success of the federalism over the past year.
That's a hot take.
It really was.
Chris,
do you disagree?
No, I don't disagree at all.
No,
I think you're right. The amount of everything from election law to this to policing, everything that they're trying to seize. It now haven't come out, and I haven't read into this, so correct me if this is fake news.
I will.
That the feds had a plan to arrest Chauvin were he to be found innocent by that trial. They weren't going to let him leave the courthouse.
Really?
I mean, this is the level of wild of insanity that we're dealing with here. Giuliani, his house being raided. I mean, we still haven't gotten to the bottom of the probe that was launched to figure out what all of the spying the Obama administration did in the last administration. I mean, it actually works having this media coverage, because the entire first 2 years were the media of the Trump administration, were the media screaming as if this was happening, and it didn't happen. And then when it actually does start to happen and political enemies actually start to get arrested under the Biden administration, no one says a word, and it's normal. It's like it's kind of good to have these friends in the media. They should probably be disbanded.
What did you watch Tim Scott's response? Anyone?
No, I read part of it, but yeah.
He did a pretty great, I mean, he
did a great job. Yeah.
Not only did he do a great job, which is so incredibly rare and so difficult to do. It was certainly helped by the fact that Joe Biden was half asleep in an empty room, which is usually what the Republicans are having to do.
Yeah.
Usually there's a curse. And also, I mean, did the left just fall right into a Republican dream response? I mean, it's unreal.
He gave a shout out to like single mothers.
Yeah, you know that McCarthy and McConnell were sitting there saying, "All right, so if Senator Scott goes out there, I mean, I just don't think that the left can behave themselves. Like, I just don't think they can handle it. I think they will say awful and racist things." Now, President Barack Obama used to do that all the time. He used to try and use this or use Michelle to try and like bait what he thought was Republicans into saying what he thought they really thought, which is, you don't deserve to be here because you're a black man and I'm a racist. They never did that because it wasn't in their heart of hearts. They didn't think that crap. But the Democrats think it. So they actually weren't able to control themselves. And they came out and they attacked Tim Scott, Senator Scott, as Uncle Tim. And Twitter allowed that to trend and made it a thing. It's like, I mean, geez, how stupid are you? If you work for a left-wing media censorship company like Twitter, I would censor that. Like, if I ran a right-wing Republican operation and Pizzagate started to go, I'd be like, oh, no. It didn't matter if every conservative in America was tweeting it. I'd be like, nope, not happening. And they let it happen. It's like, who was on the censor bureau?
But they are that stupid.
They're that stupid and that racist.
Yeah.
It is in their heart of hearts.
They're like, oh, Uncle Tim, that's exactly what he is.
So clever.
They're like, this is an important discourse that must be launched on our platform. Kylie, what did you think of what you read?
Yeah, so I read parts of his speech, and what I saw is interesting because Joe Biden branded himself as the unity president. And I thought it was interesting that Senator Scott's speech was so much more hopeful and gave so much more of a message of unity and just the American spirit and bipartisanship than Joe Biden ever has in his first 100 days and did even last night. Like, It was very divisive. You know, it's like Joe Biden is like, you know, Mr. Joe Unity Biden over here talking about institutional racism. And then Tim Scott gives up and gives like a hopeful unifying message. And it's funny to see them or read them back to back and just see the discord there because...
I thought the sort of light, happy message from Tim Scott was very effective. And like it's again this sort of Joe Biden was saying that, you know, this isn't America's sunset. He said something to that effect, but was also talking about, you know, they want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to say that America is wonderful. But, you know, in my opinion, that's mostly gesturing. I'm not sure how much they actually really like America anymore, how much a lot of them actually really like America anymore. But at the end of the day, he's also talking about how everything is systemically racist and everything is miserable. There's daily bloodshed, blah, 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 blah. It's like, gosh, Tim Scott gets out there and he's like, this is an awesome country. I think Tim Scott can sometimes fall into like robotic establishment Republican language.
Yeah, he really can.
Yeah. But this time I actually thought, you know, that was a really tactically coming out there and being light and happy about America and talking about opportunity in a way that Joe Biden sort of tried to do, but also was sure to couch in this kind of darker language. That was, I mean, you can almost call it American carnage.
I mean, I know we got to run now, but it's just usually these things go so poorly for people. I mean, I remember Marco Rubio gave one. And years later, on the campaign trail, Donald Trump is like blasting water out of his water bottle. Why? Because Marco Rubio took a drink of water. His career is ruined. And there are other things that played into his primary. But these things always just play so poorly for people. And for the end of that, for Tim Scott, who handles himself really well under fire, but generally is a boring politician. He's like not a really exciting person. He's not Donald Trump. To come out of that and be like, the reaction, like the news of this isn't that I drank a glass of water. It isn't that it looked weird. It isn't that I looked like an alien. I think like was it Debbie Wasserman Schultz or somebody did a few years ago. It was that the left used a term for me that they call such a vile and racist term that they have literally banned that book in their children's libraries.
Yeah.
They used it for a sitting U.S. senator because he disagrees with them.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Good speech, Senator. I don't know what you said. I don't remember what you said, but good speech.
Yeah, again, like it's not a thing that matters hugely, although It is kind of an audition for a primary or other jobs down the road or more prominence in the party. And to that, you know, if that's the test he was trying to pass, he passed with, you know, a plum. Is that what people say?
I've never heard that.
Well,
pass
I don't
with
know.
The plum sounds nice.
Listen.
It's a healthy alternative to a bag of chips.
Yeah, I'm tired.
Yeah,
I don't like plums.
Yeah, but Emily, you were up late and up early for work, so
yeah. So everybody
God
leave me alone. Yeah, thank you, Christopher. I called you Christopher in a sort of like formal way because you were being a gentleman.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, you've been listening to another edition of the Federalist Radio Hour. Today I was joined by my colleagues Kylee Zempel, assistant editor at the Federalist, and Christopher Bedford, senior editor at the Federalist. Chris, where can people watch your new show?
They can watch it at Olympic Media. It'll be coming out next week, where they'll be putting it on their social pages and emailing it out to people. And the Culture Wars are called Culture Wars, and it's going to be hard-hitting.
All right. Well, you guys can all look out for that. I'm Emily Jashinsky, culture editor here at the Federalist. As always, we'll be back soon with more. Until then, be lovers of freedom and anxious for the fray.